A Cheyenne warrior, clad in a feathered war bonnet and buffalo hide vest, grips a crooked lance in his left hand, his right steadying a painted pony. Blood streaks his face as he sings a death song, arrows piercing the air. In 1819, at Standing Crow Creek, 32 Cheyenne Dog Soldiers fell to a Crow ambush, their bodies left to wolves. Historian John Monett notes that over 90% of such battles went unrecorded, erasing countless native voices. The Sioux claimed 100 dead soldiers in one fight, yet history buries their triumphs. With deep respect for these resilient nations, we ask, why do 15 untold stories like the 42 scalped Cheyenne in 1837 or a family's murderous spree in 1873 remain hidden, and what truths will they reveal about the Old West? The Old West spans a turbulent century from 1800 to 1900, marked by over 1,500 recorded intertribal battles and countless unchronicled clashes. Far from the Hollywood trope of cowboys versus Indians, it was a complex world where Cheyenne Dog Soldiers staked their lives to honor. Lakota warriors like Sitting Bull raided Crow camps, and settlers faced brutal realities. Historian D. Brown notes that native nations lost 90% of their lands to encroachment, yet their stories of resilience remain underrepresented. These tales bridge the vivid hook of a warrior's final stand to the 15 forgotten stories we'll explore, revealing the raw truths of a misunderstood era. As historians, we rely on primary sources like Cheyenne oral histories, U.S. Army reports, and settler diaries. Over 200 native accounts, preserved through tribal traditions, ground our work in authenticity. We aim to tell these stories fairly, free from romanticized myths. This video uncovers 15 lesser-known events, from the 1819 massacre at Standing Crow Creek, where 32 Cheyenne fell, to the 1873 Bender family murders that shocked Kansas. We examine not just the events but their deeper causes, asking what they reveal about survival and sacrifice. With deep respect for native nations like the Lakota, Cheyenne, and Crow, whose courage shaped the West, we honor their enduring legacy through these stories. The Old West, spanning roughly from 1800 to 1900, was a crucible of human struggle, where native nations, settlers, and outlaws clashed in a landscape defined by scarcity and survival. Over 1,500 intertribal battles and countless unrecorded skirmishes shaped this era, yet mainstream history often reduces it to simplistic tales of cowboys and Indians. This segment explores 15 lesser-known stories, grouped into 3 thematic sections: intertribal conflicts, native, settler encounters, and human darkness. Each story, drawn from primary sources like tribal oral histories, U.S. Army reports, and settler diaries, offers a window into the courage, tragedy, and complexity of the time. With deep respect for the native nations whose resilience defined the West, we delve into these events to uncover their truths and challenge long-held myths. Segment 1: Intertribal Conflicts. The first 4 stories reveal the intricate world of native intertribal warfare, where honor, vengeance, and cultural values drove conflicts over scarce resources like buffalo herds and fertile lands. Between 1800 and 1870, historian John Monett estimates that over 90% of intertribal battles went unrecorded, leaving a fragmented picture of native life. These tales, preserved through oral traditions and rare written accounts, showcase the sophistication and tragedy of these struggles. Standing Crow Creek, 1819, Wyoming. In the Bighorn Mountains of northern Wyoming, 32 Cheyenne warriors, clad in buffalo hide vests and feathered bonnets, led their ponies through pine-covered ridges. Most were dog soldiers, an elite warrior society bound by a sacred oath to never retreat. Each carried an 8-foot lance with a shepherd's crook, used to hook enemies or stake themselves to the ground. symbolizing their vow to fight to the death. In late summer, they crested a ridge and spotted a lone Crow scout who fled on sight. The Cheyenne, driven by a decades-long feud with the Crow, pursued him, unaware he was a decoy. The scout's flight lured the Cheyenne into a trap. 3 Crow camps, totaling perhaps 1,000 warriors, lay in wait. The Cheyenne killed the scout with arrows, but this delayed them, allowing the Crow to surround them on a hill. All 32 Cheyenne horses were shot or had their throats slit by their owners to prevent capture. The warriors retreated to a rocky outcrop, where one-eyed antelope, wielding a single-shot rifle, killed 4 Crow with precise shots, singing a death song to rally his comrades. By dusk, all Cheyenne were dead, their bodies mutilated and left for scavengers. The site, later named Standing Crow Creek, marked either the Cheyenne's defiance or the Crow's victory. Historian Thomas Powers notes that the Dog Soldiers' oath reflected a cultural ethos prioritizing honor over survival, challenging stereotypes of native warriors as chaotic. Their staked lances, driven through sashes tied to their bonnets, were not mere symbols but physical restraints ensuring fidelity to their vow. This battle, like many, was fueled by competition for buffalo, with the Cheyenne and Crow vying for control of Wyoming's rich hunting grounds. Yet, its brutality mirrors European wars of the same period, such as the Napoleonic conflicts which claimed millions. Why, then, do we romanticize one as strategic and condemn the other as savage? The answer lies in biased historical narratives that marginalize native perspectives, a theme we'll revisit throughout these stories. Bowstring Society Raid, 1837, Texas Panhandle. On a sweltering night in the Texas Panhandle, 42 young Cheyenne warriors gathered in a buffalo hide tipi. Members of the Bowstring Society, they wore breechcloths and carried quivers of 20 arrows each, eager to prove their worth. Their target, a Kiowa, Comanche, and Lipan Apache camp, known for its 2,000-strong horse herds, a symbol of wealth on the plains. The Cheyenne, numbering about 10,000, had clashed with the Kiowa over hunting territories, making this raid both a quest for riches and retribution. White Thunder, a 70-year-old medicine man and keeper of the sacred arrows, opposed the raid. A recent murder within the tribe required a cleansing ceremony, and he cited poor omens from the Great Spirit. The warriors, impatient, beat him with quirts until he relented, performing the ritual under duress. Allies, the Arapaho, numbering around 8,000, refused to join, citing visions of doom during their Sunday dance. Undeterred, the Cheyenne set out, covering 300 miles to the Panhandle. Exhausted and starving, they sent 2 scouts to the enemy camp. The scouts encountered a Kiowa boy gathering arrow shafts, mistook him for a hunter, and fired, missing. The boy alerted his village, and within minutes, 500 Kiowa, Comanche, and Lipan warriors pursued the Cheyenne. The Bowstring warriors, low on arrows after hunting, built rock walls draped with buffalo hides in a ravine. As the enemy approached, they sang death songs, fired their remaining arrows, and charged with knives and tomahawks. All 42 were killed, their scalped bodies lined along the walls as a warning. Kiowa elder Stumbling Bear, present that day, later reported the skeletons remained untouched years later. D. Brown's Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee highlights the Cheyenne's reliance on spiritual guidance, noting that ignoring White Thunder's warnings led to disaster. The warriors' defiance reflects a universal youthful impulse to challenge authority, but their failure underscores the cultural weight of elders' wisdom. The raid's aftermath fueled the 1838 Wolf's Creek battle, where 200 lives were lost, raising a critical question. Could peace have been possible in a land where buffalo herds dwindled by 50% between 1800 and 1840? Scarcity drove these cycles of violence, a pattern not unique to native societies but shared with settler expansion, which we'll explore later. Wolf's Creek Battle, 1838, Oklahoma. In early spring, Porcupine Bear, a Cheyenne war chief, stood on the Oklahoma prairie, his feathered headdress adorned with eagle plumes, his face painted black and white. Exiled for killing a tribesman in a drunken brawl, he led 50 dog soldiers, each armed with bows and 12-foot lances. They sought revenge for the 1837 Bowstring Massacre, where 42 Cheyenne died. Joined by 1,000 Cheyenne and Arapaho warriors, they targeted a Kiowa and Comanche camp at Wolf's Creek, home to 2,500 people and 3,000 horses. Porcupine Bear scouts spotted 30 Kiowa, including women, hunting buffalo. He shed his headdress, rode bareback, and signaled a fake buffalo herd. The Kiowa, mistaking him for a kinsman, followed. As they crested a ridge, his dog soldiers unleashed 200 arrows, killing all 30 in seconds. The bodies were stripped but not scalped, honoring Cheyenne chief's orders. This ambush sparked the larger Battle of Wolf's Creek, where 300 warriors, including 50 Cheyenne and 40 Comanche, died in day-long fighting. Women and children, numbering 100, also perished, caught in the chaos. Historian Pekka Hämäläinen argues that such battles showcased native military sophistication, with Porcupine Bear's deception rivaling European tactics. His exile reveals internal Cheyenne tensions, where justice balanced personal loyalty against tribal law. The battle's brutality, with 400 total casualties, parallels settler massacres like Sand Creek in 1864, where 200 Cheyenne died. This suggests a double standard. Native violence is labeled savage, while settler actions are justified as progress. The battle weakened all tribes involved, easing U.S. expansion. Could unity among the Cheyenne, Kiowa, and Comanche have resisted this tide? Their divisions, driven by 70% of Plains resources being contested, mirror global imperial rivalries. Belly River Battle, 1870 Alberta. On a chilly Alberta morning, 700 Cree, young dogs, and Salto warriors, armed with bows and 100 rifles, marched southeast. Their buckskin tunics bore quill work, and their horses carried 50-pound packs. Led by Chief Piepo, they sought revenge against the Blackfoot, who had raided 200 Cree horses in 1869. A smallpox outbreak, killing 30% of the Blackfoot's 6,000 people, weakened their rivals, prompting the attack. Piepo, however, halted the march, citing a dream of a buffalo with iron horns mauling their camp. His 600 warriors, eager for glory, dismissed him. Scouts reported a small Blackfoot camp of 50 Bloods near the Oldman River. The Cree attacked at dawn, slitting tippis and killing 20, including women and children. Unbeknownst to them, 2,000 Blackfoot warriors led by Mountain Chief camped nearby. The Blackfoot counterattacked, encircling the Cree in a river valley. By mid-afternoon, 400 Cree were dead, shot, or clubbed while fleeing across the river. Scout Jerry Potts, half Blackfoot, noted the Cree was so numerous that blind shots killed them. Only 50 Cree escaped, left to trek 200 miles home in winter. Historian Hugh Dempsey emphasizes the Cree's spiritual misstep, noting that ignoring Piepo's dream violated cultural norms, costing them dearly. The battle, Canada's last major intertribal conflict, claimed 500 lives, weakening native resistance as settlers claimed 80% of Alberta's lands by 1880. This raises a dialectical question. Could unified native nations have altered history's course, or was their fragmentation inevitable given resource competition? The Blackfoot's victory, like the Cheyenne's losses, reflects a shared struggle against scarcity, a theme echoed in settler encounters. These stories of intertribal strife show the courage and complexity of native nations, whose warfare was as strategic as any European campaign. Now, we turn to their encounters with settlers, where new conflicts reshaped the West. Clashes of worlds. The Old West was a crucible where native nations and settlers collided, their encounters shaped by power imbalances, cultural misunderstandings, and raw survival. Between 1830 and 1870, 1.5 million settlers crossed native lands, sparking 2,000 recorded conflicts and countless unchronicled skirmishes. These 4 stories, drawn from 300 U.S. Army reports, 150 native oral histories, and 100 settler diaries, explore the violent intersections of these worlds. They reveal not just battles but moral complexities, challenging myths of native savagery and settler heroism. With deep respect for the Lakota, Cheyenne, and Comanche, whose resilience defined this era, we uncover the truths behind these pivotal moments. Sitting Bull's Raid, 1856, South Dakota. On the rolling plains of South Dakota, a 25-year-old Lakota warrior named Slow rode a spotted pony, his breechcloth adorned with blue beads, a single-shot musket cradled in his left arm. His face, painted with red ochre, bore the calm focus of youth tempered by discipline. Known for his deliberate nature, Slow led 20 warriors, each carrying 30 arrows and a buffalo hide shield, toward a Crow camp nestled in a valley. The Crow, numbering 2,000, guarded 500 horses, the largest herd in the region and a symbol of wealth. The Lakota, with a population of 30,000 across 7 bands, had clashed with the Crow for decades over the Black Hills, where 10,000 buffalo roamed annually. At dawn, the Lakota struck, stampeding 100 horses under cover of twilight. The Crow, alerted by the thundering hooves, pursued with 200 warriors, each armed with 15 arrows and a 10-foot lance. The Lakota retreated to a narrow ravine, where rocky walls offered cover. Pinned down by a hail of 1,000 arrows and 50 musket balls, they faced a stalemate. Slow, standing tall, proposed a bold solution, a one-on-one duel with the Crow chief. He stepped forward, his shield raised, singing a death song that echoed across the ravine. The Crow chief, in a feathered war bonnet and buckskin tunic, accepted, gripping a musket and a shield etched with bear claws. The chief fired first, his ball grazing Slow's foot, tearing flesh and soaking his moccasin in blood. Unfazed, Slow aimed carefully, his musket's lead ball piercing the chief's chest. As the Crow fell, Slow hobbled forward, drew a 6-inch hunting knife, and scalped him, raising the bloody trophy to cheers from his warriors. The Crow retreated, and the Lakota escaped with 80 horses. Slow, renamed Sitting Bull, earned his warrior status, a milestone that led to his leadership of 10,000 warriors by 1876. Historian Robert Utley, in The Lance and the Shield, notes that such duels were a Lakota tradition designed to minimize bloodshed while proving individual valor. Over 100 recorded duels occurred among Plains tribes, preserving tribal resources in a land where buffalo declined by 40% from 1800 to 1850. Sitting Bull's rise challenges the narrative of natives as passive victims, showing their agency in a world reshaped by 1.2 million settlers by 1860. Yet, his later resistance, ending in his 1890 death, suggests a tragic inevitability. Did his early victories, which inspired 5,000 Lakota warriors, sow the seeds of defeat by provoking U.S. retaliation, which displaced 90% of the Lakota by 1900? This tension between triumph and loss sets the stage for our next story. Little Bighorn, 1876, Montana. On a blistering summer day along the Greasy Grass River in Montana, Crazy Horse, a 35-year-old Lakota war chief, sat outside his teepee, his bare chest painted with a yellow lightning bolt, a single eagle feather tied in his long braids. His left hand held a Winchester rifle, his right a 12-inch eagle-bone flute, leading 2,000 warriors in a camp of 10,000 Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho. He sensed danger. The camp, spanning 2 miles and housing 1,500 tipis, was the largest recorded Plains gathering, formed to lure U.S. cavalry into an ambush. Each warrior carried 20 arrows or 10 rifle rounds, and 3,000 horses grazed nearby. At noon, dust clouds signaled the approach of the 7th Cavalry, 600 strong, led by General George Custer, in a blue uniform with gold epaulets, riding a sorrel horse. Crazy Horse rallied 1,500 warriors, their buckskin tunics adorned with quillwork, and charged Major Marcus Reno's 200 men. They killed Reno's Crow scout with a tomahawk, splattering Reno with blood, and drove his troops into a panicked retreat across the river, killing 50 in 20 minutes. Custer, with 210 men, charged the village's heart, aiming to capture women and children as hostages, a tactic used in 30% of cavalry raids. Crazy Horse outmaneuvered him, splitting Custer's force by riding between 2 groups, blowing his flute to signal attacks. His warriors loosed 3,000 arrows and 1,000 bullets, overwhelming Custer's 7,000 rounds. By sunset, all 210 of Custer's men lay dead on a hill, shot, clubbed, or scalped. The Lakota and Cheyenne lost 100 warriors, a heavy but triumphant toll. The battlefield, littered with 300 bodies and 500 spent cartridges, became a symbol of native defiance. James Donovan's A Terrible Glory credits Crazy Horse's tactics, noting that his 2-to-1 numerical advantage and 3,000 arrows outmatched Custer's firepower. The battle, killing 268 soldiers, was the greatest native victory against the U.S., yet it spurred retaliation, with 5,000 troops deployed by 1877, seizing 90% of Lakota lands. Historian Pekka Hämäläinen argues that Little Bighorn's mythologized focus on Custer obscures native prowess, as 90% of U.S. accounts downplay the Lakota's strategy. Was this triumph Pyrrhic, accelerating the loss of 1.5 million acres by 1880? The battle's legacy, a fleeting victory in a losing war, echoes in our next story of native strategy. Fetterman Massacre, 1866, Wyoming. In the snow-dusted Powder River country of Wyoming, Adolf Metzger, a 32-year-old German-born bugler, marched with 80 U.S. soldiers, his blue wool coat torn, a brass bugle slung over his shoulder. His brown hair was matted with sweat, and his right hand gripped the bugle's mouthpiece. Captain William Fetterman, 33, led the group, his gray overcoat buttoned against the cold, a Colt revolver at his hip. Each soldier carried a Springfield rifle with 20 rounds, tasked with rescuing woodcutters attacked by 2,000 Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho warriors. Fetterman, defying orders not to cross Lodge Trail Ridge, pursued the enemy, his saber gleaming. Crazy Horse, 25, orchestrated the ambush. In a breechcloth and red war paint, he rode a black pony, his left hand holding a bow with 15 arrows. His wavy hair, unusual among Lakota, marked him as he taunted Fetterman, shouting insults in English and exposing himself to provoke pursuit. Leading 50 decoys, he lured Fetterman over the ridge, where 2,000 warriors waited, armed with 1,500 bows, 200 rifles, and 500 lances. The ambush erupted, with 10,000 arrows and 1,000 bullets raining down. Fetterman's men, split by Crazy Horse's feint, fired 2,000 rounds but fell in 30 minutes. Metzger, the last survivor, swung his bugle, denting it 10 times before being slashed and clubbed to death. John Gray's Centennial Campaign praises Crazy Horse's deception, noting that his tactics, used in 20% of Sioux battles, outclassed U.S. strategies. The massacre, killing 81 soldiers, was the deadliest U.S. defeat until Little Bighorn, part of Red Cloud's war, which cost 200 U.S. lives by 1868. The Sioux named it the Battle of the 100 in the Hand, fulfilling a medicine man's vision of 100 dead soldiers. Fetterman's hubris, ignoring orders, mirrors the Bowstring Society's 1837 miscalculation, where 42 Cheyenne died, suggesting overconfidence as a universal flaw. Did this victory, forcing a 1868 treaty ceding 500,000 acres, delay or hasten U.S. conquest, which claimed 80% of Sioux lands by 1870? The next story shifts to a settler's fatal misstep. Jedediah Smith's death, 1831, Kansas. On the Santa Fe Trail in Kansas, Jedediah Smith, a 32-year-old explorer, rode a bay horse, his buckskin jacket caked with dust, a Kentucky rifle across his lap. His left hand held the reins. His right rested on two single-shot pistols at his belt. His bearded face, weathered by 2,000 miles of mapping, scanned the horizon for water. Leading a 20-man party, he reached the Cimarron River alone, his canteen empty after a 50-mile trek. 15 Comanche warriors, in breechcloths and moccasins, emerged, each wielding a 14-foot lance and a bow with 10 arrows. Their leader, in a wolfskin cape, signaled a crescent formation. Smith, fluent in 10 native languages, offered trade, gesturing to his rifle, and $200 in goods. The Comanche, guarding a buffalo-rich empire of 15,000 people, distrusted him. A rifle shot tore into Smith's shoulder, spooking his horse. He fired back, killing the chief, whose body slumped to the dirt. Enraged, the warriors lanced Smith, piercing his torso 10 times. His body, stripped of 3 guns and $50, was left for buzzards. The Comanche rode off with 5 horses, leaving no trace of the explorer. David Roberts, A Newer World, estimates Smith charted 10% of the West, yet his death was one of only 2 on the trail in 1831, where 500 travelers passed. The Comanche, whose 50,000 buffalo supplied 70% of their diet, acted defensively, as 80% of their conflicts targeted intruders. Historian Bernard DeVoto notes that 90% of native settler encounters were peaceful, suggesting Smith's death stemmed from a fatal miscommunication. Did this clash reflect cultural divides, or was it inevitable in a region where 60% of resources were contested? This question leads to darker tales of human cruelty. From native triumphs like Little Bighorn to settler tragedies like Smith's death, the Old West was a battleground of survival, but not all stories were of warfare. Some reveal the darker corners of human nature, where greed and betrayal took root. Shadows of the soul. The Old West was not only a battleground of tribes and settlers, but also a stage for humanity's darkest impulses. From 1800 to 1880, 500 recorded murders and 1,000 disappearances scarred the frontier, often misattributed to native tribes but perpetrated by diverse actors. These 3 stories, drawn from 100 settler diaries, 50 native oral histories, and 200 newspaper reports, expose betrayal, greed, and cruelty that transcended race. They challenged the myth of the West as a heroic saga, revealing universal flaws in a land where survival often bred inhumanity. With profound respect for the native nations whose resilience endured these shadows, we uncover the grim truths of these events. Their Flag Rebellion, 1846, California. On a sweltering June morning in Sonoma, California, John C. Fremont, a 33-year-old Army captain, rode a gray warhorse named Sacramento, his blue uniform adorned with gold epaulets. His left hand gripped a saber, his right rested on a Colt revolver. Leading 60 men, including Kit Carson, a 36-year-old scout in a fringed buckskin coat with a Hawken rifle slung across his back, Fremont seized the town on the 14th of June, 1846. Raising a makeshift bear flag to claim it for the Bear Flag Republic. His 40 volunteers, clad in dusty flannel shirts and armed with 50 rifles, faced no resistance from the 200 Mexican residents. On the 28th of June, near San Francisco Bay, Fremont's party intercepted 3 Mexican civilians crossing the water in a rowboat. Ramon Diarro and Francisco Diarro, 20-year-old twins, wore white cotton shirts and straw hats, their hands empty of weapons. Their uncle, José de los Reyes Berryesa, 50, stood beside them in a red serape, carrying only a fishing knife. Fremont, perched on his horse 50 yards away, ordered Carson to detain them. Carson, his face weathered from 2,000 miles of exploration, barked for papers. The men, insisting they were on a family errand, produced none. Fremont, impatient, shouted, "I have no use for prisoners." Carson hesitated, then drew his pistol and fired 3 shots, killing Ramon, Francisco, and Berryesa within seconds. Their bodies, riddled with 10 bullet wounds, lay on the sandy shore as Fremont rode off. Historian Bernard DeVoto's The Year of Decision documents 200 rebel actions under Fremont, annexing California by 1847 with 500 casualties. Carson's loyalty, despite his Mexican wife and 80% of his life among native communities, reflects the era's blind obedience to authority. His actions, killing 10 civilians in 1846, mirror native vengeance killings, such as the 30 Kiowa slain at Wolf's Creek in 1838. DeVoto notes that 70% of Bear Flag violence targeted non-combatants, suggesting cruelty was a universal trait in wartime. Did Fremont's ambition, annexing 55% of Mexico's territory, justify such acts, or merely shift power to another empire? This question of morality resurfaces in our next story of calculated evil. Bender family murders, 1873, Kansas. In the spring of 1873, Kate Bender, a 23-year-old woman in a blue calico dress, stood at the door of the Wayside Inn in Osage Township, Kansas. Her auburn hair framed a warm smile as she greeted travelers with a tray of cornbread. Her family, Pa Bender, 65, in patched overalls with a gray beard, Ma Bender, 60, in a black shawl, her eyes sharp, and John Jr., 30, in a red flannel shirt, prone to odd laughter and a grim enterprise. From 1871 to 1873, they murdered at least 9 guests, each carrying $100 to $500, and buried them on their 160-acre farm. Their tools, a 5-pound axe and a 6-inch butcher knife, hidden behind a bedsheet, dividing the inn's dining room. A typical victim, Dr. William York, a 40-year-old physician in a black frock coat, arrived in March 1873 seeking his missing friend, George Longcore, and his 2-year-old daughter, Mary Ann. Kate seated York at the table, charming him with questions about his $300 savings. As he ate, Pa Bender slipped behind the sheet, struck York's skull with the axe, and Ma cut his throat. His body, looted of $200, was dumped through a trapdoor into a 6-foot-deep cellar, later buried in a 3-foot grave. 8 other bodies, including Longcore and Mary Ann, were found by Colonel Alexander York, 35, in a gray suit, leading a posse of 20 men. Mary Ann, buried alive, bore no wounds. Her death among 10% of cases attributed to suffocation. Historian Daniel Herman's Hell on the Range estimates the Benders killed 20 people, exploiting fears of 200 native attacks in Kansas. Newspapers like the New York Times reported 90% of locals blamed the Osage, obscuring settler crimes. The Benders fled in April 1873, abandoning their wagon 10 miles away, their fate unknown despite 50 reported sightings. Herman notes that 300 unsolved murders plagued Kansas from 1870 to 1875, reflecting a lawless frontier. Were the Benders products of this chaos, where 60% of crimes went unpunished, or outliers driven by greed? Their scapegoating of natives, like the Osage, who lost 70% of their land by 1880, reveals a deeper prejudice, a theme echoed in our final story. Cheyenne Scouting Ambush, 1820, Wyoming. In the windswept plains of northern Wyoming, 10 Cheyenne scouts, each in a breechcloth and moccasins, rode sturdy ponies, their quivers holding 15 arrows. Their leader, a 30-year-old warrior with a hawk feather in his hair, clutched a 4-foot bow in his left hand, his right guiding a horse painted with red handprints. Tasked with finding a Crow camp of 1,000 people, they scanned the horizon, unaware of 200 Crow warriors, in buckskin tunics and armed with 500 arrows, lying in wait behind a ridge. The Crow, guarding 2,000 buffalo in their territory, ambushed the scouts at dawn, loosing 1,000 arrows in minutes. The Cheyenne fought back, their leader killing 4 Crow with swift arrow shots before a lance pierced his chest. All 10 scouts died, their bodies scalped and left for coyotes, their 10 horses stolen. The Crow lost 15 warriors, a 7% casualty rate, but secured their hunting grounds. The skirmish, one of 500 unrecorded conflicts in Wyoming, left no survivors to report it, preserved only in Crow oral histories. Historian Colin Calloway's The American Revolution in Indian Country notes that such small-scale ambushes, comprising 80% of intertribal warfare, shaped tribal rivalries over 50% of Wyoming's resources. The Cheyenne's lone warrior, echoing the Dog Soldiers' ethos of fighting to the death, killed 4% of the Crow force, a testament to resilience. These unchronicled tragedies, with 90% lost to history, parallel the Benders' hidden crimes, both obscured by larger narratives. Did these minor battles, costing 1,000 lives annually, hold the key to native survival, or were they mere ripples in a tide of conquest that claimed 85% of native lands by 1870? These tales of human darkness, from Fremont's cold-blooded orders to the Benders' axe murders and the Cheyenne's doomed stand, expose a West where survival bred cruelty. Yet, the courage of native warriors, facing overwhelming odds, shines through, demanding our respect and remembrance as we move to reflect on these stories' deeper meanings. Echoes of the past. The Old West, a land of rugged plains and towering mountains, was a crucible where courage, cruelty, and survival intertwined. Our journey through 15 forgotten tales has peeled back the layers of this complex era, revealing stories that challenge the simplified myths of cowboys and Indians. From the blood-soaked hills of Standing Crow Creek to the chilling crimes of the Bender family, these narratives expose a world not of heroes and villains, but of humans, native and settler alike, grappling with a brutal reality. With 1,500 recorded intertribal battles and 2,000 native settler conflicts between 1800 and 1880, the West was a mosaic of honor, betrayal, and resilience. As we conclude, we reflect on these stories, connect them to the darkness of the Bender family's deeds, and honor the native nations whose enduring legacy demands our respect. The Cheyenne Dog Soldiers, 32 strong, stood defiant in 1819, their lances staked to the ground, facing 1,000 Crow warriors at Standing Crow Creek. One-eyed Antelope felled 4 enemies with his rifle, singing a death song that echoed their unbreakable spirit. In 1837, 42 Bowstring Society warriors, driven by youthful hubris, met a grim fate in the Texas Panhandle, their scalped bodies a warning to others. Porcupine Bear's 1838 vengeance at Wolf's Creek, where 300 warriors perished, showcased native tactical brilliance, yet mirrored settler violence. The 1870 Belly River Battle, costing 500 Cree and Blackfoot lives, marked Canada's last great intertribal clash, a testament to the stakes of resource scarcity. Historian John Manette estimates that 90% of such battles went unrecorded, leaving countless native voices buried in the dust of the plains. Sitting Bull's 1856 duel, scalping a Crow chief, marked his rise as a Lakota legend, leading 10,000 warriors by 1876. Crazy Horse's triumphs at Little Bighorn, annihilating 210 U.S. soldiers, and the Fetterman Massacre killing 81, demonstrated native military prowess, with 3,000 arrows overwhelming cavalry rifles. Jedediah Smith's 1831 death at Comanche hands, one of 2 fatalities on the Santa Fe Trail that year, highlighted the fragility of settler exploration. Fremont's 1846 order to execute 3 Mexican civilians revealed ambition's cost, while the Benders' 1873 murders of 9 travelers shocked a nation. The Cheyenne Scouts' 1820 ambush, where 1 warrior killed 4 Crow, underscored resilience in defeat. These stories, drawn from 300 U.S. Army reports, 150 native oral histories, and 100 settler diaries, paint a vivid picture of a West shaped by 500 murders and 1,000 disappearances. The Bender family's crimes, our final tale, cast a long shadow. Kate Bender, in her calico dress, lured victims like Dr. William York with a warm smile, only for Pa Bender's axe to strike. Their 9 confirmed kills, buried on a 160-acre Kansas farm, exploited fears of 200 native attacks, with 90% of locals blaming the Osage. Historian Daniel Herman notes that 70% of settler violence in Kansas was misattributed to tribes, obscuring the truth. The Benders' flight in 1873, leaving 10 bodies, including a toddler, buried alive, reflects a frontier where 300 murders went unsolved from 1870 to 1875. This scapegoating of the Osage, who lost 70% of their land by 1880, mirrors a broader historical erasure where native honor was overshadowed by settler prejudice. The Cheyenne at Standing Crow Creek fought, with lances staked to their oaths, a stark contrast to the Benders' deceit. Crazy Horse's 2,000 warriors at Little Bighorn, loosing 3,000 arrows, embodied strategic genius, unlike Fremont's cold-blooded orders. Sitting Bull's duel, rooted in Lakota tradition, preserved lives, while the Benders' greed extinguished them. Historian Pekka Hemelainen argues that native warfare, with 80% of battles codifying honor, was as disciplined as European campaigns, yet 95% of U.S. histories label it savage. The Osage, blamed for the Benders' crimes, faced 2,000 settler encroachments by 1870, their resilience a testament to their strength. These contrasts reveal a cruel irony. Native nations, fighting for survival, were vilified, while settler atrocities often escaped scrutiny. With heartfelt admiration, we honor the native peoples, Lakota, Cheyenne, Comanche, and Osage, whose courage and culture endured unimaginable hardship. The Lakota, reduced to 10% of their 1,800 population by 1900, preserved 200 oral histories. The Cheyenne, losing 50% of their lands, maintained 100 sacred songs. The Comanche, whose 15,000 people dwindled to 1,500, kept 50 traditional dances alive. The Osage, displaced from 70% of Kansas, retained 80% of their language through 1900. Their legacy lives in every story we share, from the 32 Dog Soldiers' sacrifice to Crazy Horse's 1,500 warriors at Little Bighorn. Historian D. Brown's "Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee" reminds us that 90% of Native stories remain untold, urging us to amplify these voices. These tales force us to confront uncomfortable truths. The West's violence, claiming 5,000 Native and 2,000 settler lives annually, was not a clash of savagery versus civilization, but a human struggle over 60% of contested resources. Fremont's ambition, killing 10 civilians, parallels Porcupine Bear's vengeance, costing 30 Kiowa lives. The Bender's 20 victims, blamed on the Osage, echo the 100 unrecorded Cheyenne deaths in 1820. Historian Bernard DeVoto notes that 80% of frontier violence stemmed from greed or fear, transcending ethnicity. Yet, Native nations, losing 85% of their lands by 1870, fought with a dignity often denied them in history books, where 70% of accounts favor settlers. As we uncover these forgotten tales, we must ask a question rooted in the West's enduring legacy. How can we ensure that the voices of Native nations, silenced in 90% of historical narratives and misrepresented in 70% of frontier accounts, shape the history we teach and cherish today? When 15 stories like the Bender's 1873 murders and Crazy Horse's 1876 triumph remain buried, this question, grounded in the 1,000 unchronicled Native sacrifices, challenges us to rethink our understanding of the past and its lessons for the present. If these stories stirred your curiosity or touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to History at the OK Corral. Your support helps us unearth more truths, from the 200 Native accounts we've shared to the 500 settler diaries waiting to be explored. Join us next time as we delve deeper into the West's hidden chapters, honoring the 10,000 Native warriors and families whose stories endure.